weekly breakdown of every NASCAR Cup Series race. Here are your hosts, Kevin Batstone, NASCARSky, and Jeff Davis.
Welcome back, race fans, to another great episode of Mash the Gas podcast. I'm Jeff Davis, and joining me shortly, Miss NASCARSky and Kevin Batstone, here to cover the Food City 500 from Bristol Motor Speedway. What a race it was. And Kevin, tell us, buddy, who mashed the gas?
Well, you know, it's always good to get a pick correctly on Mash the Gas, but it's a little bit sweeter when you pick a first-time NASCAR Cup Series winner. Ty Gibbs finally gets it done. 3 years in the making. He won the Xfinity Championship several years ago before moving up to Cup. Now gets his first Cup win, led 25 laps, had to hold off a charging Kyle Larson and Ryan Blaney in an overtime finish there. I mean, he had to earn this one, guys.
Yeah, he did. I mean, I was honestly shocked a little. I guess I shouldn't even say I was that shocked. The whole 54 crew, and, you know, obviously including Ty Gibbs, has been really, really good this season. They've been very impressive. I mean, he's doing better than he definitely had a better day than his teammate in the 20, that's for sure. But yeah, that is just so cool for him. It's always nice to see. It was cool also to see, Joe Gibbs get interviewed after. I mean, it's always nice when it's such a family sport. I'm glad he got his first win. It's something that he'll remember forever for sure.
Yeah, it was really cool seeing him in victory lane. You know, he was just grinning ear to ear. You know, he took his mom around into victory lane, had her in the car, gave her the flag. Super cool. You know, Ty Gibbs, he only led 25 laps, but hey, he still won the race. I mean, he's had 131 starts. And, you know, you guys probably remember it was in 2022 when he made his Cup debut. And that was when he was substituting for Kurt Busch, because he didn't run full time as a rookie until 2023. And obviously he got Rookie of the Year. And, you know, like both you guys mentioned, he's been running so hot this season. You know, I think he's had 4 or 5 top 5 finishes in 7 races. And the other ones were top 10s, like P8, I think, twice. So he deserved it. He's coming out this year strong. And it was just really cool to see him win.
Yeah, it really was. And he, you know, kept clawing his way back all day. That initial restart, he fell all the way back to 14th, got hung out to dry on the high side there when everyone was kind of sticking to the bottom. That's what's interesting about Bristol is we saw the inside line was the quickest, and then as the rubber started to get laid down, these guys kept moving up, and then that high line is what ultimately we would see them take on restarts. They were able to protect, you know, kind of rim riding that wall, and I think that's where Ty had the advantage to hold off Blaney. They could get inside of him, but just couldn't quite slide job to make the pass. And I think you got to thank NASCAR for that 750 package for that. And the tire wear that we saw, tire management. I mean, Ty Gibbs was on 120 lap old tires, and Blaney came down 4 fresh feel goods, ripped through the field, but just didn't quite have enough, Sky.
Yeah, and, you know, speaking of Blaney, he's done a lot of crawling back through the field this year. I don't know what it is with that 12 pit crew. It is so interesting because I feel like, I mean, I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly on the broadcast yesterday, they said the 22's pit crew is labeled fourth right now. Penske is usually known for their precision, and they're just always executing on these pit stops. I do not know what is going on with the 12 crew this season. I mean, it's totally understandable. Everyone's going to make mistakes here and there, but I mean, it is an every week basis. And I feel like at this point, you know, looking at like, you look at football, they have this incentives in their contracts where it's like, oh, if you make this many catches, you get an extra $1 million. I feel like Blaney needs to ask Penske, hey, every time I pass a car, you know, it's got to be like $1,000 bonus or something, because he'd be raking in dough.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because Blaney's such a good driver. Like I said, he really was in the back of the field a couple times, twice. I mean, his pit crew, from what I counted, they cost him 11 spots between all the pit stops. And that adds up. You know, when you're losing 11 spots over every pit stop other than the cautions or the stage breaks, you know, that's where, like we said, that's where you win races, is on and off pit road. But Blaney, I mean, he came back and he was really cool about it too. You know, he was pretty stoked out for Ty. You know, he gave him props. But I thought the funniest comment was from Kyle Larson. And, you know, he said, you know, if it wasn't for Blaney's pit crew, you know, they're awful slow. You know, he could have won that race. And he kind of laughed about it, but he's absolutely correct. Because, you know, like you said, Sky Joey's got a really good pit crew. You're right. I think they're ranked around 4th. You know, so what I'd like to see, I want to see the, like, you know, in the All-Star race where they did the old, you know, the pit crew challenge, and, you know, best pit group gets $100,000 split between them. I want to see him bring that back.
Yeah, I mean, it's just super frustrating, right? I mean, it's like having an all-star, first round draft pick quarterback with a terrible offensive line, not being able to showcase what you can do. Jeff, you had mentioned he lost 11 spots yesterday. He's lost 86 spots on pit road this whole season. More than, I mean, twice the amount that these other guys have lost. Now, a lot of that speaks volume too to the fact that he's running up front so much. We saw what he had to do in Phoenix, coming back through the field twice. Running up front, you lose 15, 20 spots on a terrible pit stop. That's going to add up pretty quick. But at some point, these races are going to come down to a late race pit stop like it did, where track position is going to matter. Now, had his pit crew been a little bit tighter, it's hard to say if he was going to beat Ty Gibbs. I just feel in that scenario, the way the cautions fell, which we'll get to with old Rowdy retaliating on Riley Herbst there, that was just the situation. They stayed out. A couple guys stayed out with them, gave him a little bit of a cushion for Ty there. But yeah, Ryan Blaney, super frustrating. But the good news for him is he's got one of the fastest hot rods at the racetrack every week, and he's in a great points position.
Roger Penske better be thanking Blaney because he is so resilient. And like I said, we've mentioned it. He just, no matter what, he's still going to end up being in the conversation at the end of the race, despite all of the pit crew challenges. I'm happy to see Chase Briscoe in the 19 finish in the top 10 as well. I mean, I feel like he's had a pretty rough season this year, which he was so hot last year. So it's just interesting to see that. I hope that he can he's digging himself out of the point situation that he's in. He wasn't doing too good at the beginning of the season. I like to see him. I know that he can perform well at Kansas, not to jump too far ahead. So hopefully he can take this momentum and keep going because, I don't know. The 19 and the 20, I feel like they're just not up to par with the 11 and 54, which is so interesting to say, honestly.
Yeah, and like you said, Chase Briscoe, he really is coming up a little bit. He actually moved up 4 spots in the standings this last race. So congratulations to him. But one thing I want to get back is what Kevin was kind of talking about with old Rowdy or Riley Herbst. I mean, we saw that at the very, very beginning. I mean, do you guys think that he got into Rowdy just a little bit? I think he did just a little bit, and I don't know if it's intentional or not. But that second caution, I think, Kyle Busch, he just drove right through him, you guys.
100%. I mean, that was Rowdy retaliation. I don't think the 35 intentionally wrecked the 8 early in the race. I think he just overdrove it, was trying to slide job the 8, was kind of racing hard, overdrove the corner and just wiped him out. I mean, it was a mistake, sure, but I don't think there was any intent there for Riley. Now, on Kyle Busch's behalf, he had an opportunity with 3 to go to wipe him out, put us into overtime. It's debatable. I mean, is NASCAR going to consider that a retaliation? Wasn't there a no tolerance on that? We know right rear hooks are no good. He didn't necessarily right rear hook them, but it's just going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
I mean, penalty? I mean, is it deserving of a penalty, you guys?
I don't know. I mean, is it the right thing to do? No. I don't know. You have to be penalizing a lot of people, I feel like, for all that stuff. I mean, didn't he just do the same thing to Carson Hocevar like last race or 2 races ago or something?
Yeah.
He like drove right through him. I think Rowdy's just getting to the point where he is just fed up with the situation that he is in. And I think that his fuse is just very small at this point. So he's kind of retaliating against these kids. Maybe in his mind, he's thinking like, this is what it takes. Cause back in the old days, that's what it took, kid run into you so many times, veteran turns him or whatever. I feel like the kid kind of calms down. So maybe that's also what he's thinking. He's like trying to help. I don't know. I hate to see it because you don't want to see anyone hurt. Concussions and stuff like that. Back injuries are so easy to get. You don't want to see anyone hurt, but I don't know. It's a tough situation. I don't know what Rowdy was thinking.
Yeah, it's a weird gray area, Jeff, right? Because we know NASCAR said no retaliation, but it's, we went through this last year where there was a couple that we saw at COTA last year that wasn't penalized. And I don't necessarily feel that this deserves a Kyle Busch penalty, but I do think it should be brought up in the drivers' meeting, before we take the green flag in Kansas, just to kind of a reminder of what the rule is. Because the reality is that could have drastically changed the outcome of this race. And in fact, it did because it shook up everyone coming to pit road, people staying out. It was 3-4 laps to go. And he's like, yeah, I'm just going to clean out the 35, put us into overtime. And now it changed everybody else's race strategy. So, when you're doing retaliation moves that are going to cost other drivers potential top 10 finishes, where do we draw the line?
Yeah, and during that pit stop, Kyle Larson, I know he took 2 tires, and Ryan Blaney took 4. They were still both right there at the end of the race, so obviously good pit calls for both of them. And I thought it was pretty cool when, like right at the beginning of that start, where, Larson gave Ty Gibbs just a little bit of a bump in the back, kind of gave him a little shove forward. Because, like Kevin was mentioning earlier, this is one of those tracks where, yeah, once the rubber lays down, the top groove literally becomes the best spot. As far as starting, I think that starting grid up top, that top lane is good at the beginning or at the end of the race, but you lose that compound traction during the race, and that's why I think it moved a lot to the top. But it was a great restart. It was very interesting. So again, it was cool to see him up there holding that sword at the last Great Coliseum. I love Bristol for that, and it was a good race overall, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was overall a win. Going back to what Sky was mentioning about how you've kind of got half of JGR Toyota's performing, the other half are kind of playing catch up. I mean, what happened to the 24 guys over on the Hendrick Motorsports side? Kyle Larson kind of carried the torch for those guys this weekend. Chase Elliott had a terrible day. 48. Alex Bowman back on the racetrack. Glad to see he's back. Terrible day. William Byron goes out, qualifies 32nd, runs 3 laps down all day. What in the heck happened to that 24 car?
I have no idea. That totally shocked me. But I did feel really bad for Bowman in the 48. I mean, SVG spun around. It was an accident, and he just got caught up in it. And how shitty is that? It's like, I haven't been in a race for 5 weeks now. I missed 4 races, I think it was. Got that extra week off, came back this week, winds up getting in a wreck and finishing in last place. So really unfortunate for Hendrick Motorsports overall, other than Kyle Larson, which I know is my pick from a couple weeks ago for this. So, I got P3 out of that. But anyway, it was still a great, entertaining race. It's going to be interesting to see what pulls out into Kansas City next week, with Kyle Busch. I think he's just getting to the point where he's feeling like, okay, I'm the intimidator now. Other than he's not driving well, he's just driving like he's pissed off, and if someone gets in his way, I'm just going to drive right through you. And NASCAR, I think, needs to say something a little bit about it. You can only do this so many times and get away with it before it becomes inevitable that this is exactly what he's doing. He's just frustrated and driving through people.
Yeah, I think what Kevin said is a good idea. Just bring it up in the driver's meeting, like, hey, if this kind of action keeps happening, then we're going to have to take corrective action against it and, start handing out penalties. But when I was looking at the standings, back to Alex Bowman, I thought it's not that it's funny, but for so many weeks he was at 23 points. And then when I looked today, he was at 24. And I was just like, well, he's slowly getting his points where he can. We mentioned Joe Gibbs Racing, how half of them, the 20 car didn't have a good day. We talked about Hendrick Motorsports, but RFK, hey, good for them. I mean, they have been just so shocking. I think the most shocking aspect of RFK for me personally is Brad Keselowski. I don't know if maybe he was just so over the playoff system, and now that it's no longer the playoffs, he's like, all right, got my jets back on, I'm ready to go. But they had, I think, all their cars finished top 15. I think Ryan Preece finished in the top 10, yeah. So that's really good for them. I mean, I don't know. RFK is almost getting up there to compete with Penske as the top team for the Fords.
They're consistent. They've definitely found something. And BK had quite the day. I mean, he spun out, overcame a speeding penalty, had to drive through the field a couple times, which was really difficult for folks to do. Like we'd mentioned with Christopher Bell, gets a speeding penalty, goes to the back, wrecks it, tears the right side of it off, and his day is just killed. So to get a speeding penalty and get thrown into the back in Bristol is no good. I mean, it's so difficult to overcome track position there, Jeff, to drive your way up. Tyler Reddick did the same thing. But as far as the RFK Fords, they've shown that they can run with speed everywhere. They qualify, they practice well, they run top 15, top 10. They're really honing in, I think, on going a pretty decent winning streak for those guys. It's very possible.
And the 20 car also, I think, had a loose wheel, and that's where he spun out as well. So, yeah, Christopher Bell just had a crappy day, unfortunately. And I felt bad for him. He's a good guy. But to both your points, yeah, RFK, man, this is their year. This is the best year we've seen them run. I mean, hands down, this is great to see where they're at. I love seeing Chris Buescher up there. He's a great guy, and seeing, like you said, Brad Keselowski, for some reason, they just have it going on right now. They're finishing very, very well. So, and they're up there in the points, so I think we're going to have to see what they do in Kansas and going forward, but they are definitely contenders this year for the championship.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as we look at the point standings here, obviously Tyler Reddick still has a pretty decent cushion. It's shrinking a little bit, 62 points over Ryan Blaney. You got Denny Hamlin there in third, who, oh, by the way, Denny Hamlin's led the most laps of any driver this season. So that's kind of one of those weird stats that don't really mean much, but it does show. He's top three in points, led the most laps. Ty Gibbs moves up 2 spots. And then Chase Elliott just kind of quietly hanging around there, in a top 5 points position after a not so great day in Bristol, coming off that grandfather clock win in Martinsville. We are going to a Kansas track there that Hendrick won both races last year. So, it's going to be interesting to see it as this mile and a half package and program of 2026 continues, because we've only been to Las Vegas. We can't really count Atlanta towards that. So I'm just kind of curious to see, is Hendrick going to show up? Is it going to be a typical Toyota, Joe Gibbs kind of day?
And one thing I did want to bring up though about Kyle Larson, I know you said, Denny Hamlin has led the most laps, but as far as this year, how many times has Kyle Larson swept both stages? I mean, I know he's won both stages in three of the last four Bristol races. And yesterday was the 15th time Larson has swept the stages in a cup race. And out of all those, he had won 8 of the 9 that he's done that in. So, he's getting his points and he's running in there. It's just a matter of time before he gets his first win. And I think he'll do well. He led 108 or 284 laps. So, Larson is definitely carrying the Hendrick stable right now.
For sure. And heading back to a racetrack where he got his last win. So, he's coming up on a 1 year winless streak. And I don't know if you guys caught the O'Reilly Auto Parts race on Saturday. He did the same thing, Jeff. Swept both stages. And then here comes old Connor Zilic and gets himself an O'Reilly Parts win, which he really needed. He said it was a morale boost. He really hasn't been running very well with Trackhouse. We've kind of covered that. SVG's kind of carrying the torch for them, which isn't saying much. That's a team that needs improvement for sure. And I think it's hard to put all of that expectation on Connor. You got to look at his teammates. You got to look at what's going on with Trackhouse as an organization. So really cool for him to go out and get a win on Saturday.
Yeah, it's ever since Ross Chastain and Daniel Suarez, I feel like, got into it. I don't know what happened, but Trackhouse has not been doing too hot. I personally, on my bingo card, did not have Ty Gibbs getting his first win before Connor Zilic. I mean, I thought my confidence every week is dwindling a little more. I'm obviously, there's still plenty of road courses, and I feel like that's probably his best shot to win is on a road course. But I don't know. Zilic is just, but it's still his first year. You can't knock him too much. I do agree. We need to look at, really, you need to look at someone like Ross Chastain, who's been around in the sport the longest, because even Shane Van Gisbergen hasn't been around too long. So they definitely got to get it together, because, I mean, you look at Daniel Suarez, and he's at least in 15th in points right now. Spire, the 77's up there. I think the 71 fell out of it. I didn't mark where he was. But, yeah, if I was Trackhouse, I'd be looking at the 7 and wondering what could have been. I don't know if maybe Daniel Suarez will be performing as well at Trackhouse. I don't know if it's an equipment issue or what's going on, but I don't know. For me personally, I like to see when a guy leaves a team and he does well right after.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel Suarez, I've always liked the guy, even when he was running for Joe Gibbs, and he's been bumped into a couple different teams, obviously, here, but, he did get a top 12. He finished P12. Bubba Wallace is right above him in P11. And Bubba Wallace, hey, we were talking about him at the beginning of the year. Remember when he was in second standing in points right behind Tyler Reddick? And now he's dropped down quite a bit. I mean, not a lot, but he's 8th in points right now. William Byron's right above him in 7th. But Bubba's not doing so hot lately. I mean, he's getting decent wins, but if he wants to stay in that top 16, he's going to have to do a little bit better.
Well, I think that shows you what a DNF can do to your points position. I mean, the 23 has speed. They practice, they qualify well, had some decent finishes to start the season. Going to a track that he's won at, their mile and a half package is pretty good. I'm not panicking just yet if I'm that 23 camp. Bubba Wallace, I do think there's some good tracks coming up for him that he's got a lot of confidence in. 150 points back, 8th place. Not the end of the world. Now, if we were 5 races into the chase, I'd be having a different conversation, but a lot of time to right the ship for a lot of these guys.
It's not even just, you as a driver having a good run, but you got to look at all the people above you in points and what if they have bad runs? So there's still so much racing left for the season. It's hard for me to even decide on who I think, because I tried to do that before I got on today, was see which drivers I would kind of worry about, but I don't know. I'm not worried about too many of them and just feel like there's so much time. Um, and who knows, like the 45 could have 4 races in a row where he DNFs and all of a sudden, there goes Denny Hamlin up at the top of the point standing. So it's just so much racing left. I'm interested to see drivers like that. Like I brought up Connor Zillage. I thought honestly he'd be a lot higher. I'm shocked to see he is as low as he is, but he's just a rookie. There's Shane Van Gisbergen up there. I don't know. I'm just interested to see how it goes. I'm so happy that it's a chase. I just feel like it's going to be just so awesome at the end of the year.
I think it's all going to be worth it. I think the changes that were made between the points, the 750 package, we learned something about Talladega. We'll get more into Talladega next week, of course, but I'm sure you guys saw that NASCAR is going to adjust the stage lengths to try to combat some of that, running 70% throttle, kind of saving a little bit, trying to milk it to the end, which I think is a good move, Jeff. We've talked about stage racing or super speedway racing and how it was just right around to the end of the stage, right? Just have enough gas. So I think that this move is really going to help amp up the racing in the second stage, where the second and third stage, really, when you think about it, where these guys are going to have to go full send, mash the gas, and compete at a different level than what we've been doing on the super speedways.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And I think they're doing the right thing by doing this because, as we were talking about at the end of that race, guys aren't able to pass each other. And it's just, you're running the top 5, you got a chance. But lengthening that first stage and then the last 2 stages make it to where you're going to have to pit no matter what. So it's going to be great. I think they're doing a really good thing with that. Like I said, I know we'll get into it more next week, but I think NASCAR definitely made the right call on that. Now, but as far as points go, right now, again, we're still pretty early in the season, but if I'm sitting here in maybe 230 points and back, people need to get something done. I mean, we're looking at guys that should be up there. I mean, I'm kind of surprised Josh Berry. I mean, I think he's a pretty damn good driver, but he's 258 points to the negative. I think he could be higher. And Kyle Busch is barely above him at negative 255. And like Sky was mentioning, Ross Chastain, he should be doing better as well. He's 233 points. So again, I know we're early, but to see Chris Buescher and Brad Keselowski right now in 10th and 11th place, only about 156, 157 points back, I think is awesome. So, I know we've been talking about them for years about, hey, when are they going to come around? They're just lagging. They're usually, 20th in standings are back right now, and they're just kicking ass, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, RFK, all of them, it's the only team that has all of their drivers in the top 16 right now. So I don't know what they got going on. Like I said, maybe Brad Keselowski's just that good of an owner. He just got the morale up over there. I really love NASCAR's approach this season. I don't know if it's the leadership switching or what, but I feel like they're just so receptive to what the fans want or what the fans see as issues and wanting to change that. And I feel like that is, I don't know, it's just making me so optimistic. I felt like for the last few years, it felt so stagnant and it almost like a lot of fans, I feel like, can probably relate to this. It like lost its spark. It was like so much stuff that we didn't like. I mean, there were so many, like the cautions, they were throwing cautions left and right. It was causing so many issues and it felt like they were just playing with the outcome of the races. They had the playoff system, which not a lot of fans liked. We talked about adding the horsepower. They didn't do that for so long. And then for them to then look at Talladega and look at the stage racing, which fans have been complaining about for a while with, them running the 70% throttle and just not a lot. It just isn't it isn't what it is. I'm so happy as a NASCAR fan that they are approaching these issues and trying to fix them. To me, the more they do this, like it wouldn't even bother me if they try something and it didn't work. As long as you're trying something and trying to get it fixed, I don't know. As a NASCAR fan, it's the most optimistic. I don't know how you guys feel, but I've felt in years.
Yeah, I think it's great. And huge shout out to Steve O'Donnell. I think he's done a fantastic job in his new position, if you will. I mean, he was already kind of doing a lot of these duties, but we know with Steve Phelps stepping out, I think O'Donnell is a little bit just kind of more grounded with keeping the sport where the fans love it, right? Because we were in that weird period there, Jeff, for years where we lost the old fans, the Tony Stewarts, the Jeff Gordons, the Jimmy Johnsons retired. And we tried different things and gimmicky things and the All-Star race. We moved the number around on the car. NASCAR went through kind of this rebranding period, and I think we're in a really healthy place as a sport for sure. If we can just get some of these stream services kind of worked out, and that's any sport though. I don't think that's really going to change. That's just living in 2026 and watching sports. But I think Steve O'Donnell and NASCAR's leadership's done a terrific job this year.
I actually, speaking of the streaming thing, I did see, and it doesn't directly mean NASCAR, but there is the United States had opened an investigation on the NFL doing the exact same thing. Having so many games locked on these streaming services where you have to pay, and so they're doing a lot of investigation with the way sports is being streamed and brought to us in the year 2026. So I hope that obviously that if something happens, that would also affect NASCAR. So I hope that something does, because I mean, it is getting to the point where I don't know exactly what the number is on NASCAR, but the football content that I watch, I think it's like $1,600 just to watch every single NFL game. I mean, it is just ridiculous. And I think the same thing with NASCAR. I hope that something can get fixed with that, because it is just making it, like you said, that is like the biggest hurdle at the moment. A lot of people can't afford to do Amazon Prime and all these different things just to watch races.
It's absolutely absurd. It really is. As my dad literally brought it up just 2 nights ago. I was chatting with Pops, and he's like, they were just talking about this on Fox News. It's like, all like NBA and NFL are starting to do the same thing. It's like, you have to have Amazon Prime. You have to have, whatever other service, Paramount. You've got to have. And if you don't have NBC Sports, it's like you have to have cable. And the intention of doing a lot of these streaming services so people could kind of have to get away from subscribing to cable and make it less expensive on their pocketbooks. And now what they've done is they've even made it worse to where you have to have cable and all these different streaming services to watch it. And people are actually going to go back and be like, screw this. I guess I might as well just go back to having cable again instead of having to subscribe to all these other services as well. And I think you're right, Sky. It's becoming an issue across the board in all major sports, and it's totally not cool. Everyone's getting screwed over, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think we're just going to have to kind of see how it pans out, because these stream services are so chomping at the bit to get these contracts to stream these major sports. I did read kind of a rumor that CBS might be in play. We know they have a huge partnership with the NFL. Kansas is on regular Fox this weekend, so that's something that anyone can get with just an over-the-air antenna. I think that's the route that NASCAR needs to go, is getting on Fox National, CBS, getting on channels that everybody has easy access to. And I'm fine if you want to throw a 6-week prime, race session in there. I think majority carry prime. I get some people are going to get pissed that they have to pay for it, whatever it is. But I think if you can focus on just those over-the-air networks, NBC. Problem is when we're on, quote unquote NASCAR and NBC, it's on USA, which then you need Sling, Fubo, you need a cable stream service to get. So that would be awesome if we can go in that direction of getting on, a CBS, nationally aired channels that we typically see the NFL on, that we see the playoffs on, and other sports. I think that's the move.
Yeah, if you want to watch practice or qualifying, you have to have Amazon Prime. If you want to watch the truck race or the O'Reilly series, you have to have the CW channel. I mean, it's making it hard to have to go, okay, I need 7 different freaking channels in order to watch all the NASCAR that I want to watch. It's on every other channel. And I think a lot of it has to be, I'm pointing the finger at the organizations themselves. They're going, okay, let's see here. I'm NASCAR. Who can I get the most money out of? Let's look at this streaming service, this cable channel, this streaming service. And I think the NFL and the NBA are doing the same damn thing. It's like, okay, how can we bring in more revenue to our sport? But overall, they're winding up screwing the fans. And that's really unfortunate.
It is, because who's making them all the money at the end of the day, And if
Us.
you lose, exactly. And if you lose the fan base, you might as well kiss the sport goodbye. No one's going to want to pay. I mean, I do know that the contracts are crazy. It's like millions, like it is ridiculous, that amount of money that these streaming platforms will pay, to just host an NFL game or whatever. It's absolutely crazy. I've always loved Kansas. Kansas is one of my favorite tracks. One of my favorite Joey wins ever was when he won Kansas in 2020, the fall one. So I just always loved Kansas. I'm so excited. I've never been, but I feel like it'll be a good race this weekend.
Yeah, I've been to Kansas Speedway more times than any other racetrack in the country. Super stoked. Jeff, you and I are going to be there this weekend. We're going to be everywhere on the ground. So if we run into some Mash the Gas fans, come hang out with us. We're going to be there. Great barbecue, great atmosphere, great fans out there. Tickets are still on sale, so that does worry me a little bit, Jeff. We're kind of seeing Kansas go through a Texas thing a little bit where attendance has dropped off, and I can't figure out why because we've had some of the best racing, mile and a half racing at Kansas over the last few years. Think about the Kyle Larson and Chris Buescher's close finish there with .001 seconds, right? Closest finish in NASCAR history. Always 3, 4, 5 wide on the restarts. It's exactly what you want out of mile and a half in America's heartland. You got the Hollywood Casino off turn 2, second best barbecue in the country. Texas takes that, but it's just an overall good time.
Yeah, I mean, the Kansas City track is so easy to get in and out of. It's in a great area. There's tons of restaurants. There's tons of shopping. I mean, hell, I sat next to Denny Hamlin at Hooters, and it was funny as hell because no one even recognized him. And I was like, "Oh, Dad, look, there's Denny Hamlin sitting right there." And I'm like, "Sure as hell." But yeah, it's just a great track to go to, and it's fun. I mean, and I think you're right. I don't know what it is, why it ebbs and flows like that. Texas is starting to gain traction again. We're getting a lot of people in the stands, and it's a fun track. But Kansas City's been one of my favorite tracks as well. I mean, other than Texas, Kansas is. I've been there more times than any other track other than Texas Motor Speedway. But yeah, it's going to be a fun track. It's an interesting track because I like that it has progressive banking. I mean, you've got all 4 turns have got 17 in the bottom, 20% on top as far as banking. Your front stretch has got 10% of banking. Your back stretch has 5% of banking. And this is a fast track. So you're going to see a lot of guys coming in, to turn 2 and to turn 4, riding really high and then coming really fast down low to get that inertia going. And there's going to be a lot of good passing. So I'm really looking forward to Kansas City.
Yep, great racetrack for sure. Sky, I'm going to let you go first this week because I feel like I've stolen a lot of your picks in the past. So who you got for Kansas?
That is the worst thing you could have done. I have 3 drivers circled because I don't know. Originally I had the 5, and I was like, I'm going to have to take this before Jeff takes it.
Good call.
But I think throughout all of this, I think I'm changing my pick. I was going to also go with the 12, but I think at the end of the day, this is who I'm choosing. I think it's going to be Chris Buescher in the 17. That's who I have winning Kansas.
I like it.
Your second RFK pick of the year. I like it. They're due. Jeff, who you got?
Phew, it's funny. I mean, Sky is like on me right there. I was like, man, I want to take Kyle Larson, but I took him last race, so I'm not going to take him again. Christopher Bell, he was on my list too until I saw him race this weekend. And then I was going, you know what? Maybe I'll take Ryan Blaney, but then I was like, no, I think Sky's probably going to snag him up. But I'll tell you who I'm going to take because I think he's been doing damn good. And Sky mentioned him earlier. I'm going to go with Chase Briscoe. I think he can get it done in Kansas City.
I've heard a couple people take old Briscoe for Kansas. All right, well, you guys didn't take my pick, so that's good. I'm going to go with the man that won Las Vegas. Dominated, in Kansas before, blew a clutch there last year. Denny Hamlin goes out to Kansas and gets his second win of the year. He knows how to run these things. He knows how to manage it. Pit crew shows up. I think the 11's in victory lane at the end.
That is also a really good pick. Jeff and I were definitely on the same wavelength because the other 2 drivers I were picking, was also Briscoe and the 20. So I thought maybe the 20 would have a nice little comeback. He'd be mad from how Bristol went, because he is that type of driver that he can turn it on and take that anger and everything and fuel it into his racing and do really well. So I actually wouldn't be too surprised if the 20 does really well. It'd be someone that I'd probably take in fantasy, if I ever remember to actually play fantasy correctly.
That's fair, Sky. That's why you're sitting this season out. But we're getting you back in next year. I think fantasy picks, Jeff, you got to look at Hendrick Motorsports just because of how consistent they've been in Kansas. 2311 is just too hot on mile and a halves and all of the JGR Toyotas. But don't sleep on RFK and don't sleep on Spire. I feel like these guys are ready to flex their muscles.
And this has been the closest we've been in, I know we're not that far in the season yet, but our fantasy league, everyone is almost so close together. It's going back and forth between second, third. Well, other than Kevin's dad, he's actually got P1 locked down pretty darn good right now by about 100 points. But everyone else is catching on up.
Yeah, shout out to J-Bats for leading our fantasy league right now. It's not going to last long, Pops. I know you're listening, so I'm going to get you. But Kansas, weather looks fantastic, Jeff. We're going to have a great time out there this weekend. I'm glad they moved it back. This race was typically run right around the Mother's Day weekend. So, thunderstorms, tornadoes, you get a lot of weather out in the Kansas area. We know Clint Boyer is going to be fired up. He grew up in Emporia, Kansas, right down the road. He loves, going back to his home track that he really didn't have a lot of success at. My favorite Kansas memory of all time, Jeff, Sky, you probably remember, Carl Edwards full sends it down the back straightaway, doesn't lift on the gas to try to do a slide job on Jimmy Johnson and completely plows the fence. Video game move, completely failed.
Yes. I miss Carl so much. It was so nice to see him back in the sport. But yeah, that he was trying to be Ross Chastain before Ross Chastain.
That's fair. Well, we're on to Kansas, our second mile and a half. I don't consider Atlanta a mile and a half, guys, so don't bite my head off. But second real mile and a half of the year. Jeff and I are going to be out there. I would say we'll be back next Monday night, possibly Tuesday night, just depending on our travel arrangements. But either way, Mash the Gas coming your way every week, guaranteed premier NASCAR Cup Series content. Thank you for all your continued support, listeners, viewers. Mash that subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening on. Follow us across the board at Mash the Gas. Follow NASCARSky over there at NASCARSky. Going to Kansas City. Kansas City, here I come.
Eat that barley Q and mash the gas.